There have been tons of MMA fighters that have gone through the UFC, whether we're talking about guys who just scraped the bottom of the barrel or the best fighters to ever exist. But there have been some great fighters that have never gotten the recognition they deserve due to never winning the illustrious UFC belt. Whether it be by bad judge decisions, injuries, or business moves made by the UFC, these guys deserve to be among those that have held the illustrious UFC belt. Here in this video, I'll talk about the 5 best UFC fighters to never win undisputed gold. Starting this video off, we have the guy who fought yesterday and who this video is inspired by, which is Dustin Poirier. Poirier has forever been amongst the best fighters in the world, being in the UFC since 2011. He's not only fought the best in the world, but also beaten them. Guys like Conor McGregor, Max Holloway, Justin Gaethje, and so many others have been bested by Dustin Poirier. He finally etched his name in the UFC record books by winning the interim lightweight title against Max Holloway. That set him up for the undisputed title against the best lightweight to ever fight in the UFC, Khabib Nurmagomedov. Khabib does what he does to everyone the UFC puts in front of him, and absolutely dominates Dustin Poirier, submitting him in the 3rd round. But Poirier is not done yet, still striving to get that undisputed belt. He had the year with Dan Hooker and knocks out Conor McGregor twice to get back into the title picture. Poirier is booked for a second shot at the title, but this time against Charles Oliveira. But again, the same thing happens. Poirier gets submitted in the 3rd round again, and is now looking lost in the lightweight division. Fans are encouraging Poirier to move up to 170, but he's determined to win this 155-pound title. The UFC books him against Benoit Saint-Denis in an attempt to use Poirier as a stepping stone for someone new in the division. But Poirier has something different to say, as he knocks out Saint-Denis in the 2nd round. Now he was booked against Islam Makhachev, hoping that the 3rd time's the charm. But it goes exactly how his other title fights go, losing this title fight to another elite grappler. It seems when Poirier faces a fighter with super elite grappling skills, he can't get his offense going, leading to him losing these fights. It sucks to see this out of such a likable fighter, but that's just how the business works. Next, we have a fighter who's known for his outstanding striking, and that's welterweight Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Thompson comes from a karate background that transitioned into MMA, and dominated as soon as he came to the UFC. He was even regarded as the best striker he's ever seen by combat sports GOAT George St. Pierre.
Wonderboy is the best striker I've seen in my life.
Wonderboy was knocking opponents out left and right, some of those being former middleweight champ Robert Whittaker, former welterweight champ Johnny Hendricks, and Jake Ellenberger. Thompson was on a 7-fight win streak when he got his first shot against Tyron Woodley. It was an all-out brawl, being regarded as one of the best title fights of all time. But the fight ended in a draw, meaning Woodley got to retain his belt. Thompson got another title shot in the rematch, but that fight was a snooze fest, as Tyron Woodley won by majority decision. After that, he bounced between wins and losses and couldn't get back into the title picture. He's still fighting for his way to the belt again, but after being once regarded as the greatest striker ever, it seems far-fetched for Wonderboy to get that illustrious UFC belt. The next fighter on this list of those to never win a UFC belt is Alexander Gustafsson. Gustafsson was a light heavyweight in the UFC during the Jon Jones era, where Jones reigned in dominant fashion. Gustafsson was beating notable guys like Matt Hamill, Shogun Rua, and Thiago Silva up to a 15-1 record, where he would get his first title shot against Jon Jones. Everyone expected Jon Jones to wipe the floor with Gustafsson, but that was further from what actually happened. We have yet to see anyone give Jones a challenge up to this point, and Gustafsson did more than that, piecing Jones on the feet and even being able to take him down. The first 3 rounds had Gustafsson looking like he was going to beat the champ, but Jones came back in championship rounds to win the fight by unanimous decision. But Alexander's career is just getting started. He would have 2 more fights before he would get another title shot, this time against Daniel Cormier. This fight would be closer than Gustafsson's fight against Jones, as Alexander would be able to take Cormier down, but Cormier would land the more and better strikes. DC won the fight by split decision, making Gustafsson 0-2 in title fights up to this point. At this point, it seems like Gustafsson is just in the wrong timeline, but there's nobody beating Jon Jones and Daniel Cormier. Rarely does someone get a 3rd title shot after losing the first 2, but Gustafsson gets 2 more wins, including an impressive knockout against Glover Teixeira, and finds himself fighting for the light heavyweight belt once more time, once again against Jon Jones. There's some issue with the fight, as Jon Jones had a small amount of Turinabol in his system, a steroid that he was previously suspended from. But Gustafsson didn't care. as he had his eyes solely on the light heavyweight belt he's yearned for the past few years.
You know, it doesn't matter if it's on Rockets Field or whatever. I'm going to beat him anyway on Saturday night. There you go.
The fight happens, and Gustafsson gets knocked out in the third round, making him 0-3 in title fights. After this, Gustafsson fights only 3 times in 3 years and loses all 3 fights, marking the end of his career. Although he never had the belt wrapped around his waist, Alexander Gustafsson should go down as one of the best light heavyweights to ever fight in the UFC. Another fighter that has never held the UFC belt was the most unanimously hated in Colby Covington. Covington is a welterweight that came into the UFC as a humble person, just racking up wins and making his way to the rankings. He was primarily a wrestler that slowly developed his striking as his career went on. Then he tells this story about some point in his UFC career.
So I knew I was the best fighter in the world, and to hear someone tell me, hey man, we're not going to re-sign you, before I was going to fight Damian Maia, who was coming off a title challenge and ran through the division, won 7 or 8 fights in a row, and I was going to fight him in his hometown, and they're telling me after I've just beat the number 6 guy in the world, Dong Hum Kim, they're going to tell me they're not going to re-sign me.
Covington completely turned heel against every fighter in the welterweight division in order to stay in the UFC. He comes out with the famous rant in Brazil that everybody has seen.
Brazil, you're a dog! All you filthy animals suck! I got one thing to say! Tyrone Woodley, I'm coming for you! If you don't answer the front door, I'm gonna knock it in and I'm gonna take what's mine! That welterweight belt!
And got an interim title shot against Rafael dos Anjos, winning the fight by unanimous decision. He was then stripped of his interim title when he denied a fight against Tyrone Woodley due to having nose surgery. But he beats Robbie Lawler easily and finally gets his title shot against rival and number 1 pound-for-pound fighter at the time, Kamaru Usman. It was a tough fight from both fighters, but Usman breaks Covington's jaw and wins the fight by knockout in the 5th round. But that's not the last time he'd face Usman, as Covington would knock out Tyrone Woodley in his next fight and wait over a year for his next title shot against Usman. The same thing would happen, as Covington would get dominated once again by the best fighter on the planet. But luck would strike for Covington, as Leon Edwards would beat Kamaru Usman twice and be gifted a title shot by Dana White. Covington would completely violate Leon Edwards during the pre-fight press conference, like mention his dead father. But the exact opposite would happen in the fight. Edwards dominated Covington from round 1 to round 5, completely embarrassing him in front of his idol Donald Trump. We all love to see Covington get destroyed like that after everything he said, but let's not take away his greatness in the welterweight division. Due to extended inactivity, certain surgeries that kept him out of fighting, and out of the cage situations, he just couldn't win the welterweight strap, going 0-3 in title fights. The last fighter I have on this list to never win undisputed gold is the boogeyman Tony Ferguson. Ferguson single-handedly kept the dominant lightweight division afloat, while Conor McGregor and Khabib Nurmagomedov were away. He was on a 12-fight win streak, destroying opponents like Anthony Pettis, Donald Cerrone, and Rafael dos Anjos. He won interim gold against Kevin Lee while Conor McGregor was out boxing, but was stripped when he couldn't fight for undisputed against Khabib at UFC 223. But hold up, Khabib wasn't the champion at that time, it was Conor. Yes, the UFC did UFC things and refused to promote Tony Ferguson to undisputed champ, even though they've done that many times before. But that didn't stop Ferguson from destroying opponents, picking up 2 more wins before he was supposed to fight Khabib for the undisputed belt at UFC 249. But COVID happens, and Khabib is unable to fight, leaving his second interim title match against Justin Gaethje. But this would be the downfall of Ferguson, being knocked out in the final round of the fight. Ferguson would lose his next 6 fights and be the biggest what if in MMA history. What if he was promoted to undisputed? What if he fought Khabib one of the 6 times he was supposed to? What if he beats Justin Gaethje? Just a bunch of what ifs for the best fighter to never have undisputed gold. Let me know if I missed anybody in the comments. All that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys later.